A quickly strengthening storm is going to bring a lot of impacts across the US. We're talking about high winds, very high fire danger, and the possibility for more severe weather, in addition to feet of snow over the mountains in the west. This is a very dynamic and developing system. In this video, The World of Weather, I'll walk you through what you can expect and how you can stay prepared. Just looking at the alert map, we are starting to light up again with all the weather alerts, and that's how you know that this system is going to bring some pretty big time impacts. We have winter weather alerts in the mountains. The pink is winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories in the bluish color, but this central region here, this is all wind and fire alerts, and this is out ahead of our main system. We're getting a lot of wind being pushed through that's going to bring high wind impacts and very high fire weather concerns. Here's a look closer at some of the wind impacts. So some of the Rocky Mountains up into Montana, portions of Wyoming, Colorado, and then even in the panhandle of Texas, New Mexico, you're at the highest risk for these very strong winds, and we're talking about 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. So that's tropical storm force, near hurricane force in some cases, wind gusts in these areas. And this is more than an ordinary wind event. This is a potentially damaging wind event. So if you're in any of these highlighted brown areas, make sure you're prepared for that possibility of power outages, difficult traveling because of the wind blowing down the roads, and also potentially some tree limbs snapping. It's going to be that windy across some of these areas. Something else to mention, in some of the southern plains, we are also tracking a blowing dust threat. It's possible that these winds kick up enough dust to create dust storms that reduce visibility. So we see this typically in the spring, but we haven't seen it yet this year. Maybe Amarillo, portions of New Mexico, we could be looking at a dust event later today as well. Here is also a look at the fire alerts. Anyone in red, that's a red flag warning. That doesn't mean there is a fire, but it means the conditions are right where if a fire develops, it'll be able to grow quickly dangerous and be difficult to control. So this is more of a preventative caution, where if you're in this area, you don't want to do anything that might accidentally cause a burn. You want to be very safe and responsible with any potential fire threats. The Storm Prediction Center actually also forecasts fire danger, and we have an area of extreme fire risk in this pink color. Zooming in, this is northeast Colorado and southwest Nebraska, including North Platte, but anyone in this pink shade, this is where we have very high fire concern, and it's pretty rare for the Storm Prediction Center to issue this. This is their highest fire weather alert. So this means that if any fire were to develop, it could grow very quickly, be erratic in its movement, and just be very, very dangerous and hazardous. So we want to be super careful not to do anything that would accidentally cause any sort of fire, because the atmosphere is just not in a good position right here for firefighters and for fire concerns. In fact, we have a particularly dangerous situation red flag warning, a PDS red flag warning, and the National Weather Service only adds this tag when they mean business, when this is going to be a serious event. Also in this broader yellow and red color, though, we still need to watch out, and even tomorrow on Wednesday, we still have that high fire danger shifting a little further south. Maybe not as high as today, but still worth watching and still making sure that you're taking those fire safety precautions. Here's kind of the setup of why we have this high fire and wind event. We have this area of low pressure across the northern plains. See this little L here over Montana? What this is doing is ahead of it, this is kicking up all these winds in from the south. You can see these isobars are really tightly packed. These lines on the map, the closer those lines are together, the stronger the winds. And notice that we just have this area of really strong winds across the Rocky Mountains into portions of the southern plains as the system kicks to the east. This becomes more common in springtime, but we're a little bit ahead of schedule. Usually this would be more of a March system. So we're just wanting to make sure we're staying on top of that and people aren't caught off guard. To get some of the wind gusts, again, anywhere in yellow, that's where 50 plus mile per hour winds are possible. Some spots could be nearing hurricane force wind gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour. So this is more than just a impactful wind event. This is a potentially damaging wind event. Look, if we get some of these 70 mile per hour wind gusts, that's very easy to cause power outages, especially in portions of the southern plains. It's the wind and dry air. That's what's causing our fire risk. Some of the relative humidity in the extreme fire risk zone will be at 15 to 10% or even less. Dew points will be in the single digits to teens. So this is very dry air, and this means that with the wind, any fire that develops, there's really nothing stopping it from exploding, especially with a drought. So it's just kind of the perfect storm, if you will, of bad ingredients coming together to create this fire risk. That's pretty rare and pretty unusual. Alright, so what's happening at larger scale in the atmosphere is we do have a bigger pattern change coming in, and that's what's initially driving our wind threat and fire threat, but also shifting over to some severe weather concerns. So you can see we kind of have this divide. We have really warm air that's been kind of a fall spring over portions of the central and eastern US, but in the west we have this cooler air, and over the next few days, notice that this cooler air will be spreading east, and as it does so, this fall spring will eventually give way to more of a reality check. Winter is coming back. Not going to be brutally cold, but will be noticeably cooler, especially as we get by next weekend. Look at this. Instead of all these reds, the bluer shades will be filling in, and in that transition zone from the warmth to the cool down, that's where storms are possible and potentially strong to severe storms again. First though, we have to talk about the west. We've been talking talking about California for the past few days now for heavy rain and heavy snow. We have another system coming in later today that's going to bring more heavy rain across portions of California. So you're not done yet. From the north all the way down to the south, even LA, you're getting some more heavy rain. Within some of these bands, we could have some gusty winds and a localized flooding threat. So something we're watching. But also the other big story is the mountains. The Sierra Nevada mountains are just getting hammered. By the end of this system, we'll probably have 4 to 5 feet, possibly up to 7 to 8 feet in some of the highest peaks. And snow levels will be all the way down to under 3,000 feet in the mountains where we can expect accumulating snow. So a big deal snow event for you. This is really good news for the watershed. We need the snow to help with the water supply. It'll just be a lot at once. But notice all that snow also expands eastward. So portions of the Rocky Mountains, anywhere really in the west, we can expect some very heavy snow over the next few days. This is great news because we've been very snow dry this winter. In fact, most of the whole month of January, we've hardly had any snow out here. So it's a really big switch. This will be the snowiest weather by far for everyone out here in the west. Really good for the resorts, but it could bring hazardous travel and just locally heavy snowfall impacts anywhere west of the Rocky Mountains. Potential snow impacts, again, Sierra Nevada, we could see feet of snow. In the highest peaks, it's possible we get near 80 inches, which is 7 to 8 feet, so very high snowfall amounts. But even in the Rocky Mountains, we can expect some localized 1 to 3 feet snowfall total. Good news, good snow out here, but just making sure we're prepared for the snowier pattern after a very dry winter. Ending out with our severe weather risk as that storm moves further east and encounters that warmer air mass. Where those air masses collide, that's where we do have a strong to severe weather risk. So we have a marginal to slight risk right now on day 3. This is on Thursday. Focus on portions of the Midwest and just to the south near Kentucky. Illinois, southern Indiana, northern Kentucky, you're highlighted. I will say this threat will shift around over the next few days. There's a little bit of greater than usual uncertainty in the specifics of the severe weather system. So I think by the time we actually get to the event, this map could look quite different, but just an early heads up, if you're in this yellow shade, a day 3 slight risk does mean that more significant severe weather is at least possible, and we want to prepare for that possibility. Taking a look at the model, before that system comes, first of all, across portions of the northern plains, we're going to have a bit of a blizzard event setting up. So northern Midwest, northern Minnesota, into the UP of Michigan, northern Wisconsin, you can see we have this band of heavy snow extending into Canada, and with this we'll still also have the gusty winds, and this combination will not only lead to heavy snow, but blowing snow and really low visibility. We're tracking some of those blizzard concerns up there. Here is a severe weather threat though. After that initial system crosses, look to the south. Some of these thunderstorms developing across Kentucky, they're going to move further north, and as they do so, we could have these individual clusters of storms. The Storm Prediction Center is warning that any of these little clusters of storms, if they do develop, could turn supercellular in nature, and this actually poses a greater hail and tornado risk than usual. In fact, an early look at the tornado threat does show the atmosphere is supportive for some spin, and that means that we could be looking at a few of these clusters capable of producing tornadoes, potentially longer lasting tornadoes if the environment is supportive of that. Again, there is a lot of uncertainty with this in the timing, in the location, in the specifics, but an early heads up that this severe weather threat might actually be focused a little bit more on the tornado risk, potentially with some higher impacts. Extending the model a little bit further, we can see that everything will start shifting to the southeast as that colder air mass rushes in, and we could be talking about more severe weather across portions of the south and the east. You can kind of see the cold front pretty clearly kicking out the rain anywhere along and just to the southeast of that. Depending how the environment plays out, we could be dealing with some storms. And look at this, the European model indicates some pretty decent storms on your day Saturday moving across the south. The longer we go into the future, of course, the less confidence we have, but just an early heads up continuing into late week and maybe next weekend. And lastly, we did want to briefly mention those cooler temperatures. Winter is coming back. Look at portions of the northern plains. We could be back in the single digits for your low temperatures. So very cold air. The freezing line is moving to the southeast. So don't be fooled by the false spring. Chicago hit 65 degrees yesterday. It's going to be very different by the end of the week. We're going to be back in the 20s and 30s. And even in the south, it's going to get colder. Don't put away the winter gear just yet. Winter is not quite over, but we are starting to approach spring as we head into March. And I do think that this will be one of the last few cold blasts of the season. We're not that far out for some consistent warmer weather if you're craving that, especially in the north. So yeah, that's all we're tracking right now in the world of weather. Again, we have the snowstorm in the west, the high wind and fire risk, and then that eventual severe weather concern possible in the north. So just make sure you're staying safe out there. Going into the future, it's possible we get some more snow if any snow takes advantage of that colder air coming in, but details become pretty uncertain, so we'll have more updates as we get closer. So thanks for watching. Consider subscribing if you want to stay in touch with the weather and never be caught off guard, and I'll see you next time.